Have you ever been in a situation where you logged into a tool and you had completely no clue what to do? And you had to wait at least like 24 hours so that someone from the customer success team would get back to you? Hi, my name is Lucine. I'm demand generation manager at UserPilot, and last year I was one of that someone from the CX team. So I completely understand the situation from both sides. The user wants to get started with the tool, but the customer success manager doesn't have time to help them get started right away. So that's where tools like UserPilot come in. UserPilot is a product growth platform helping product managers with user onboarding and engagement, product analytics, user sentiment. You can see that, uh, as you can see, you can create all these experiences within a minute and without coding. I'm super excited about what we have for you guys today. Let me stop sharing my screen. So today we are presenting user onboarding best practices for SaaS, presented by Yaakov Carno, founder of Valubyl. Well, you'll all hear from Yaakov in just a minute, but before we get started, just a little housekeeping. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box. I will bring them up during the presentation, and we will also have time for questions at the end. And don't worry about making notes immediately because we will send you the session's recording within 24 hours. All right, now I'm gonna hand things over Yaakov. Yaakov,
Hey
the stage is
everyone.
yours.
It's a really great to be here, and I'm loving seeing some familiar names here popping up from the side panel that I've seen from LinkedIn and just around. So, thank you all for joining. I'm really excited for this. Just a short intro about myself. Um, my name's Yaakov Carno, and I'm living in Israel. I'm originally from South Africa. I started my career in the SaaS world, originally in sales, um, and then slowly progressed into the PLG game and fell in love with PLG, huge PLG enthusiast. And that's what's led me ultimately to start Valubyl, which I'll tell you more about next week because that's when we're officially going to be launching. But we are focused on bringing your product led partners to help you build your growth engines and really understand how to adopt PLG to any business model. So more about that next week. But today I'm super excited because one of the most important things for me is understanding how to get users to experience value in your product instantly. And this is the whole topic of onboarding, which there's way too much to cover in one session, but I've put together a short presentation that we can go through some of the key factors starting from A to Z, and let's see how that goes. So I'll share my screen now to go through the agenda. Let's see. All right, can you see my screen? Good.
Yes, it's visible. We can see it.
Great. All right, so today we're going to go through 5 main things, and we're going to go through also the zero to value onboarding course, which I've put together to break it up into different segments. But we want to be focusing on 5 things. So an intro to personas. Personas is something that I think is really misunderstood and not emphasized enough in the onboarding process and just in general about designing your product. The first step is to understand who you're building for. Um, then we're going to go into what onboarding actually is, where does it start, where does it go to. We're going to understand who we're building for. The main thing is that these are people that have never interacted with your product, so they don't know anything, and we have to build for that, for the beginner's mind, for people that are seeing your tool for the first time. Next, we're going to focus on something that's so important, which is personalization. There's so many easy and simple ways which people overlook, but we're going to go through some simple ways which you can start personalizing your experience. And ultimately, this leads into getting users to value as quick as possible. The whole idea is to lower your time to value to get people to experience your product's true value as soon as you can. So let's dive straight in. What I've done here is you'll see throughout the presentation, I've put some actual templates that I use to help me, and you can use them yourselves. There's many different options around, but this is a great place to start. So as I said, before you can start building your product's onboarding journey, you need to understand who you're building for. So a basic template like this can really give you insight into how you should design your journey, because you understand who they are, what they're responsible for, what are they doing today to manage their workflows, and what are they really focused on. I think an important step that people miss is taking that step back to see the bigger picture of who exactly are, like, what is the problem we're actually trying to solve. Because when they're first interacting with your product, there's so much that can be going on. There's so many different use cases that they can be looking for, and you want to be thinking, I'm designing for something specific. I want to be focusing on one persona, which I can really get to value as quick as possible, rather than just throwing a wide net and trying to show them everything in your product so that it would be like a one size fits all. It shouldn't be a one size fits all. It should be very specific. So first things is to get this clear. You can fill out this template, and we'll see how we'll work with this template throughout the journey. So this is zero to value onboarding. First thing is about what is actually onboarding and where does it start. And I titled this as Starts Before Sign Up, because you can see in the visualization, many people think that onboarding starts when they actually get to your product and they've signed in, and now you're trying to get them to explore features and get to value. But there's this whole journey before that people neglect and don't focus on optimizing and understanding and making part of the process, which is going to be thinking of things like, how do they experience your homepage? How do they first discover your product? What's the message they're receiving? What are they understanding they're there for? Because if there's a confusing message of what object they're trying to achieve now, they're going to land in your product and the confusion has already begun, and it's just a downward hill. So as I wanted to give an example, is here, we'll go back to that slide, but I want to give an example of Canva, which is so brilliantly executed that it focuses on, and again, coming back to this point of being laser focused of what am I trying to achieve here. So what Canva's done here is they really understand their persona and they understand the pain points and what they're looking for. So the onboarding has already begun the second they land on the homepage, that they're seeing exactly what problem they're trying to solve. So what will you design today? Not all these the different features that you could be using and all the benefits you could be getting, but right now we're trying to solve a problem. We're laser focused on getting you to value, and that is what will you design today. Perfectly described as Canva makes it easy to create and share professional designs. We're ready to go. You know exactly what you're in for. And once you land in the product, that journey continues in a very smooth flow. So just to reiterate this, it's so important to get your team aligned, to get marketing and product both on the same page, that people understand the problem that you're solving and how it's going to provide value to them right now. Next, I love this meme. It's about setting realistic expectations, and there's so much to say about this topic. But what I'm emphasizing here is that often people will create these huge expectations of I'm loving the laughing faces coming from the crowd. Thank you. But people will create these unrealistic expectations of what the what the product's going to solve, and people land inside your product and they almost feel like you've deceived them and you've almost trapped them. You convince them as like a clickbait to sign up by showing them all this fancy stuff that you don't even have. Like, I've had experiences where tools will show me we integrate with X, Y, and Z, and then I land in the product and it hasn't even been developed yet, and that's quite a frustrating experience. And one of the points I'm trying to emphasize here is also realizing that this is the user's first impression of what you're doing. And so if they're experiencing that you're offering one thing or you're saying you're going to solve one thing, but then you're actually providing something else, it doesn't leave a good taste in their mouth. And you need to build this relationship of trust where they're going to want to explore your product and give your product a real try. And if they land in and the first thing they experience is that it's got no alignment to what you've promised, then it leaves just a horrible taste. And it really is hard to change that first impression moving forward. So it's very important to take that step back and look, are our marketing and all our messaging and copy, is that aligned with what we're actually providing? Now, this is moving on to the building for the beginner's mind. And this is a really huge topic. I've given this cute graphic here to explain the importance of making their lives as simple as possible. Because if you make it too hard to begin, they're not going to get anywhere. It's so important to remember that people are looking at your product for the first time. Like we live in our products, as you know, we're building our products, we're designing our products, marketing our products. Wherever we're standing, we're thinking about it all the time. And so our natural thought process and intuition isn't what they're thinking. When users come to a product for the first time, they don't know anything. And so what we take for granted, what we think is obvious, that, oh, for sure they would know to click here and not here, or obviously this icon represents this button. People don't know that. And so you have to think about how to make it as simple as possible. I need to make their lives easier. I need to make it as if I need to think for them, make it as so simple for them to follow the flow and not get stuck in the trap of when you're living in your product, you think that you almost assume that everyone thinks the same way as you do. So this is a problem I've seen in so many companies, that I land in a product, I'm coming to try it out, and I realize that there's things that just don't make any sense. I'm trying to like figure out what this button is, and what I've seen is from building products is I realize that trap is because I take that for granted because I've experienced this before. But we have to think it from the perspective of the user. That's point number one. But there's a whole nother point here, is that if they don't know this, if they don't get the gist of your product and they don't find the right steps as easy as possible, then they'll simply fall away. They're not going to be able to access any of the value. And that's such a pity, because we work so hard to get them into the product and then they land and they don't know what to do. So we have to think of all the different ways that we can make it as simple as possible. Some examples are really trying to optimize our empty states, trying to fill them with checklists, with simple intuitive UIs and UXs that we can make sure that these users are following a simple flow that everyone can get. And so when I talk about something like an empty state, if we think of a tool like Notion, one of my favorite tools, when you land in the product for the first time, they've got everything set up for you, templates, everything's ready to go. You don't have to think. They've already said, just do X, Y, and Z, and everything's straightforward. So you can just plug and play and start the process to get towards value. Now, what a lot of people get wrong is that they try to think of ways that they can make it too quick. That's why also I put the graphic like this, that if you try to shorten it too much, or if you try to make it too simple, it can also lose the message, and then they don't get that the ability to move forward. Okay, so now moving on to personalization. Why I chose these two questions is because, as with all things in that I'm trying to emphasize, is that simplification is key. There's so many things that you can do to personalize your onboarding experience. When you get further into your product data, you can really set up complex systems that make it super personalized. But what I want to start with is just trying to figure out, who are they and why are they here? So if we give three simple examples of how we can customize this. And again, this is trying to simplify the personalization, not getting into the complex workflows that which definitely is important, but I'm trying to go one thing at a time. So for example, there's so many companies that have done this so well that they ask you the exact questions that they can give you exactly what you want. So for example, I've put your Canva again, there's thousands of templates that Canva could show you. And Canva has so many different sub features and sub products. But what's super interesting is that they figured out it doesn't have to be super personalized, but from this question, they can give you the perfect templates that will allow you to have one less thought process. It will just give you one step closer to what you're looking for. And so there's tools like Miro and Notion, when they ask you questions, what are you here to do? What are you trying to achieve? And not making them fill in their answers and knowing that it's not affecting their workflow, but for them to experience that if I click that I'm looking for a small business and then the right templates come up straight away, that's a great experience for them to feel like this person gets what I need, and this tool is going to give me what I need, not what any user is going to need. So you want to really just try to simplify it into asking a simple question and then making sure that you're using that information to guide them towards that problem. Many people get lost in asking so many questions, and we'll get to this in the next slide, of making sure you're not adding too many steps or too many questions. But people will ask for all different kinds of questions and categories that don't affect the user journey. So if they're asking for um, small things like throughout the onboarding process for their business name and for their phone number, all these things add into the time to value and take away from the experience of this person is asking me something that's affecting the next steps, that's going to give me something that I need. Another example is, even if you ask for their title or their role, make sure that you somehow show that appreciation. And the same thing with their name. It's a really nice feeling when you land in a tool and all of a sudden it says, "Hey Yaakov, for founders, we really recommend X, Y, and Z," and you feel that this is for me. And really humanizing that experience is super important. What I'm going to do now is, I've just been going on pretty quick through each slide. I'm going to take one step back. Lizine, if there's anything you want to add now, or any questions you want to jump into, just going to take a step back here.
No, I think at the moment we don't have any questions in the chat box, so we can continue with the presentation.
Okay, great. Let me get that up and running. Cool. Okay, so up until now, I've been speaking quite a theoretical sense, and what I want to do is now deep dive into some of the templates that I use and the techniques that I use to implement all of this. So one thing that I love doing is mapping out the whole journey into actual steps, into trying to visualize what is the user going through, so that I can sympathize with the user, I can understand what, actually see the whole process end to end, and ask myself the two very important questions. Is this necessary? And would I understand it if I was seeing it for the first time? Again, this comes back to the idea that I told you, we're living in our products. We know everything about it. But if I never interacted with my product, would I be able to figure this out intuitively? Why would I understand it and why not? And really trying to visualize all of this and appreciating that each second and each click is super important. From so many case studies, they've proven that if you can remove the more friction that you can remove, whether that be questions that aren't necessary to be asked or unnecessary clicks, the more that you can increase your time to value, the happier people are, and the quicker that they get that experience of this person is giving me value right now, and they're not wasting my time. It's really horrible when you're trying to sign up to a tool and there's just so much going on and so many unnecessary steps. Even if you get through them all, which a lot of people fall away, but even if you do, you land in the product and you feel like you've already wasted time. So that's not a great first experience that you want your users to have. This is a template that I've set up, which it might be a bit small. How does it look on your screen, Lizzie? Are you able to see it? I think you're muted there.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes. How does it
Yeah,
look?
it's small. Yeah, I can't see anything.
Okay.
If you can zoom in.
Is
Yeah,
that better?
this looks better. Yeah.
Okay, great. So what we can see here is I've set up this database in Notion to track all of my user journeys and break them up into steps. I just gave a random example here to give you the ideas of what's going on, and breaking it up into 3 questions, which ultimately form a score that you can understand where you should be improving. And so we'll see here we have the name, which will be each step really like broken down into each click. So it'll be entering your password, your business name, whatever it is, and breaking it up into 3 scores of how easy this is, how necessary it is, and how simple it is. And from there, getting a clear picture of how can I optimize this experience and remove friction so that I can make the steps to value as quick as possible, and take away those steps that aren't necessary, or the steps that can be improved or simplified needs to be done. Every step needs to be accounted for. Super important that. Okay, let's just go back to fit to screen. Okay, so here's a topic that people love speaking about, which is aha moments. So first of all, what does aha moment even mean? Is the aha moment is that moment which the product, the user finally experiences, oh, I know what this product is here to do. I know that this product can give me value. I know this product can solve my problem. So what's so important is to realize that this has to be personalized to each persona, because if we don't have that clear, that those first steps that we took of understanding our persona, understanding their pain points, then we won't be able to personalize. This is the aha moments that I'm trying to achieve. We often get confused thinking that I have to get them to experience all the value of my product. But what we need to see is that I need to be able to map out their pain points and see how can I solve that, so that when they get to that specific pain point, they'll understand, or they'll solve that specific pain point. Not they'll experience that my product can do everything, but they'll experience that this pain point can be solved doing X, Y, and Z. It's going back to that table of, let me just see if I've got it here. Sorry, I'll have to zoom in. But again, broken up now, taking that persona mapping and breaking it up into each persona, understanding the different pain points of that persona. So seeing what the pain point is, describing that, figuring out how our product solves that, what are the benefits of this, and what user journey gets them there. So from there, we can start to see which pain points can we solve easiest and which pain points are most relevant to be solved. Based on those 2 questions, we can get a much clearer direction of how we should be guiding our user journey, because we're not just basing it off of let's show them everything, let's get them to adopt as quick as possible, activate. We have a very specific goal that we want to solve one pain point. We want to prove value in one area. So once we've mapped out who they are, what their pain points are, and what's the relevant journey, we can optimize that journey and get them to that aha moment as quick as possible. finishing up here, this is really important. Everything we've been saying comes down to, at the end of the day, they're new users, they're not customers yet, and we have to be super focused on providing one point of value, solving one pain point, not just throwing everything onto them. And this is something that I've seen many onboarding journeys get wrong, is that they take you through these long product tours. They take you through a million pop-ups trying to get you to try every single feature, but that's not the goal. The goal is to give them an experience of your product's value, to take that initial experience of, I don't know what this product is, to get to, wow, this product can solve a pain point that I have. And so it's super important to remember that we're not trying to convince them right now as if they're ready to upgrade and they need to know everything about the product so that they'll get to that place. We just have to focus on one small win that we can zone in on, provide value for, solve that pain point, and move forward from there. Once we've got that initial traction, once we've understood, once the user understands where the value is, they're much more open to explore the product, to try out new features. And it comes through a much better place and an experience that they are seeing, oh, I want to see more of this. I want to figure out what more I can do. But that can only come if they have that quick experience of, this solved my pain point, so I want to know more. That's pretty much all for today. I'd love to dive into some questions from the audience. Again, just pointing out, I'd love to speak with people. If you want to reach out to me at yaakov@valubyl.com or just DM me on LinkedIn. I'm constantly posting new stuff on LinkedIn, so like and follow, and really feel free. I'd set up a time to meet. I love engaging with anything PLG, onboarding, so feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
We have a question from Beverly Hills. So, how do I know where to start? Should I make it easier to sign up so I get more users, or should I help the small amount of users I have to see the value first?
Okay, that's a great question. So I think it depends on what your goal is. So if you're asking the difference, if you should focus on acquisition, getting them into the product as quick as possible, or if you want those users that are getting into the product to experience the value first, I think they're really two of the same point, is that you want to because of the point that I was saying of where does onboarding begin? It begins before the startup. So we want to already be thinking those small amounts of users that come into the product, for them to experience value first. Even for those users, we want to optimize the sign-up experience, because that's going to affect when they land in the product, what's their attitude towards the product, how are they feeling now to try out more features and go forward. But I would say that it depends on each model, because some people have a lot of work to do with their sign-up, whether that be removing a lot of friction or helping just technicalities like improving different options to sign in. So it depends on what your infrastructure is there. But once users have landed in your product, if you have enough of a setup that it's easy to get into your product, I'd say focus on the next steps of figuring out what's the user journey I want them to go through, and what's the value that I'm trying to get across. Focus on getting your user journeys clear so that you can implement them rather than just starting to build them.
Cool. Thanks, Yaakov. Next question is from Lisa regarding the onboarding flow.
Okay, I'll just read the question out loud. If you have a good flow, what is the average rate of usage? What percentage of users use flows? What percentage of them actually complete the flows? What should we be aiming for? This is a really great question. I've spoken to a lot of early stage companies that struggle with setting their first goals. They struggle with understanding what should we be aiming towards to measure this. So they're asking questions like what's the percentage of people that actually complete flows? I think there's two things here. That one is, it's always a great thing to get the industry benchmarks clear so that you have some frame of reference. And then on top of that is to have this, trust your gut, trust your intuition of what's right and wrong, and not being afraid to experiment, because what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to see you're going to have to see from the data itself for a product like yours, which again, everyone's going to be very different. What are the actual metrics now? So if you see that, let's say you don't have a real you haven't optimized your flow at all, and you're seeing the average percentage of people that get through the user journey and get to that aha moment is 5%. So then it wouldn't be realistic to all of a sudden say, okay, we're going to implement a new journey and they're going to get to 70%. But what you can do then with that is you can say what's not realistic. And I mean, what are the two ranges of unrealistic? So it has to be more than 10% and it has to be less than 70%. So now you work with that and taking the context of the industry benchmarks for a similar product and trying to test out. One thing I've learned a lot from agile methodologies of different short sprints of work, 2 weeks at a time, is understanding setting short goals instead of getting stuck in what am I trying to aim for the next quarter, but trying to say what am I going to aim for this month or the next 2 weeks, and then reflecting on the data to see how realistic was it. So if I aimed for 50 and I got to 30, maybe I should aim for 40, or however that is it's going to be dependent on what's the actual data coming in from your current flows. I wouldn't say there's a set answer. I'm sure User Pilot is experienced that
Yeah.
every kind of industry and every product is going to have many different ranges. So I wouldn't
Yeah,
get
I
caught
think
up.
it really depends on the specific product and industry. So, and factors such as the complexity of the product or the target audience and the effectiveness of the onboarding flow, they can all affect usage and completion of the flow.
Yeah. All right. Which question do you want to go for next?
Okay, let's go in order.
Okay, great. We've got a question from Daniel.
Yeah.
How many steps should the survey at the beginning of the trial contain? In your experience, what percentage of users bounce back from completing the entire survey? Two things I want to preface this answer with is there's no specific amount of steps that should be. Each product is going to require different questions, is going to require different flows of integrations, or just different setups. So I wouldn't get caught up on the amount of steps, even though it is important, and I emphasized how important it is to reduce the number of clicks. There isn't a specific magic number. And second, like from my experience, what percentage of users bounce back from completing the survey? Two things here. One is there's the percentage of the actual percentage, and then there's the after effects of, even if they get through the flow, of how do you want them to feel. So I know for myself, when I land in a product and I've gone through now 20 questions, I'm like already tired out. I like can't think about going through another product tour, which is that's where the magic happens, and the next pop-up that has the actual value of what they should do next. So from my experience, the amount of users that stop once they've signed up, I don't know an exact percentage, to be honest, but it depends on what you mean by the survey, because different products, if they're asking, if they force you to set up your team first, or they force you to integrate first, there's going to be a much larger drop. So just in context, I'd say that products that require different types of more complex integrations should be asking less questions, because that itself is a blocker. And I've seen a huge percentage of dropped users when there's more complex flows. And sometimes that's necessary, but the more complex it is, the simpler you have to make your actual questions and the flow. So dropping questions like asking for the business name and phone number, which still some companies are doing unnecessarily, and trying to think what is necessary to get the user to value as quick as possible. Next, we have a question from Anna. Can you define what is onboarding? For our products, they require heavy implementation, and trying to find the line where onboarding ends and implementation begins has been hard. It's a great question. As I was saying, that different products are going to require different integration and implementation processes. As a general key, I often say that limiting yourself to the definition of a concept can quite distort your approach to it. So if we have that onboarding has to begin here and it has to end at this stage, it's unnecessary. Where I would say, rather, to understand what are we trying to achieve with onboarding. And so as I mentioned, that the goal of onboarding is to give users a small win in your product, trying to give them something they can take away. So if, for example, your product requires a very complex implementation process, you want to see a couple steps ahead. You want to see, so when will they be able to experience some point of value? Some users can experience value even in the implementation process, or in a complex flow where they get this experience like, wow, this is a tool that can do this flow. Even that experience can provide value. So thinking how you can help them along the way, like for someone who's never been able to integrate their certain workflow with other tools, and now they finally get to do it, even if it's a complex flow, they're already getting that small one of, I'm going to be able to finally integrate this flow into other tools. So keeping that in mind, that it doesn't have to end at a certain point or start at a certain point, but it has to be with the overall view that I'm trying to provide some value, some aha moment that they can leave this in. And sometimes they may have to even leave and come back a day later, but they've left with, I got something out of it. So where onboarding would end, I'd say, is when you've provided some sort of initial value that will push them towards the next stage of activation and adoption.
I think onboarding never ends because when they get the first value, then you have to provide like a secondary onboarding to introduce them to the advanced features, and then thirdly, and so on. And like you are getting new features and you have to introduce these features to your users. So in my opinion, onboarding never ends.
I really like that answer. I think the way I'd see it is, instead of looking at it as onboarding as a funnel, trying to get them through the top or straight to that point of value, seeing it as a loop, that constantly it's going to be reiterating that process. And for PLG, for example, I see it as a flywheel of that goes from activation to adoption to adore to advocate. But that initial stage of activation keeps coming into point, because if you're adopting a new feature, or if you're trying to push a different segment, you're going to have to reactivate. And so seeing it as a loop is super important. Thanks for that. Yeah. We have a question from Sophie. How can we help users without having too much pop-ups and flows that could damage user experience? This is the question. And so I think taking advantage of different systems that are already in place, different like ways that you can do this, like empty states and checklists and tooltips that are super helpful, are non-intrusive ways that you can make it part of the flow naturally without having to add on top of that. So instead of having to add 15 steps to your product tour, rather having it as an optional opt-in checklist that they can check in and once in a while. I think the balance is key here, of trying to figure out what's giving them a lot of value, and I mean, like, what's not confusing to leave them without, and what's too much of just like they need to stop. Um, I'd say a key point here is to make sure it's optional, because any product tour that's forced on you and you have 10 steps to go and you just click, 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 trying to get through it doesn't be a good experience. Um,
Yeah.
so I'd say take advantage of things like really optimizing your empty state, making it so obvious that when they land in, there's a clear CTA of what they should do next, without having to land in like a just no confusing place and then having five pop-ups to tell you what to do.
And yeah, and providing self-service resources would really help here, because and you make it easy for users to find answers to their questions and learn more about the product by just providing self-service resources such as a knowledge base or user guides or even like tutorial videos.
Definitely. I think that's something I didn't touch on as much as I wanted to, of having that available support is super necessary, whether that be a knowledge base, like you said, or having a live chat available, um, can be super helpful for letting users experience it at their own pace.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Um, Patricia, in order to not overload the new user when you do the onboarding, is it better to first ask their objective and only show what they are really interested in? My doubt is that I don't know if it is better to show an overview of the product, since the rest may still not know what it is for. Um, I think that's definitely true. I think that's something I try to focus in on. Of like the Canva example, there's really so much that Canva can push at their users, and how they've simplified it into one question of what are you trying to do here, and not making you think, giving you the options of I'm here to achieve X, Y, and Z. This is my objective, and straight away guiding them to that objective. What a little thing that I've loved seeing recently is they even say that is that tools will say, we're going to use this information to personalize your experience. And so you have this feeling that, okay, now this person is making it easier for me and they're getting me closer to my objective. So um, I would definitely try focus in rather than spreading a wide net. Ask their objective, and limit your onboarding experience towards that objective, because I think the chances of success and activation are much higher. Um, okay, just going back on Daniel's question when he asked about surveys, he was mentioning that these surveys are simple questions like name, industry, position, purpose of use. So this comes back to the being able to map out each step. You can map out each question and ask yourself, is this necessary and is it simple? So some questions are even complicated to answer, which is not what you want your users to be experienced. You want it to feel so seamless, the whole experience. Um, so I'd say trying to figure out ways that, I'd say one um, core rule that I would follow is, don't ask questions that aren't going to affect the user journey. So asking something like industry is, or yeah, is very unlikely that's going to affect the next steps in the product. And so what it feels like is, I'm just giving information because they need more data about me, rather than them trying to help me get to my objective quicker. So always ask yourself, is this piece of information going to be used to redirect the user journey? um, Irene asked, do you have experience on how to help users overcoming bigger hurdles in the onboarding flow, like KYC, making a selfie, making a photo of your ID document? Um, I'm not sure I understand the question. Like KYC.
It's I think know your customer.
Okay. Um,
If I'm getting it right.
for banking
Yeah,
apps.
for banking
Okay.
apps.
Um, Yeah, I would say that it's important to use the same principles here of trying to think um, what can I do to make this as simple as possible. So if you need steps like getting their selfie and making different copies of documents or whatever it is, trying to think of how can I help the user as much as possible, not just leave them to their own means. So like let them go do all the things that they need to do, and then we'll come back to our product and then it's our problem again. But seeing that how can we help make it as simple as possible? So whether that be even just adding a little template that they can just click here to add their photo, or having a document button ready to just press and plug and play instead of them having to leave the app and come back. These things are super important. So even if you do have more complex flows, there are many ways that you can you can think outside of the box to make it as in-house and as simple as possible, that you've done the steps for them. So whatever extra step they need to take, whether so that's taking a selfie or uploading the documents, how can you help them achieve that as soon as possible? So um, taking the steps, you can even map out the steps of what they would have to do outside of the app. So they have to leave the app, they have to go to their photos, they have to give permission. How can you simplify that and take away the steps from your perspective? um, yeah, definitely think that's worth focusing on.
Yeah, and I would say using a secure and easy to use interface, because now there are some like banking applications that they are requiring some, I don't know, ID documents or other documents, important documents, and you don't really trust them. I feel like if I upload my documents, they're gonna take a loan under my name and do something. So having a secure and easy to use interface would be great.
Definitely agree.
Okay. Uh, it looks like we have covered all of our questions, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Thanks, Yaakov. I'm sure our participants are excited to start implementing the strategies you shared. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to cover before a wrap up?
No, I had a great time. Thank you for all the questions. Really appreciate it. And as I said, I'd love to help out if I can. Reach out on LinkedIn, reach out on email. Happy to help, happy to set up time to chat. Yeah, great to be a part of this.
Great. Thank you, Yaakov. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here and see you soon.
Thank you.